So welcome to the 70th anniversary cocktails of the Trinidad and Tobago Institute of Architects. My name is Renate Allum. I am the current president. So this evening we have with us the Honorable Minister of Planning and Development, Penelope Robinson. Thank you for joining us. Our keynote speaker is going to be James Armstrong, the chair of the National Planning Authority.
I have been involved with architecture for quite some time. I worked with a number of architects in Trinidad and Tobago. First, through the JCC, as a lot of you are aware, the architects have been very, very active within the JCC and made a very significant contribution to civil society in terms of the causes that were promoted through the JCC with the other professions in the built environment. And I can think of things such as the procurement legislation and a lot of civil society discussions that were taking place in which the architects were very active through the representation that you had in that body, Arthur and Mark and some others. I haven't seen them yet. I thought I would have seen them here tonight, but so that there has been a very significant contribution to the civil society initiatives that we have been pursuing through the JCC. There has also been a very meaningful relationship on occasion, sometimes good, sometimes not so good, with the planning profession. As you know, it's a sort of a symbiotic relationship that we have. Within the NPA itself, we are expecting that there will be even a greater form of opportunities for collaboration with the profession. And what we have been doing at the NPA so far is that we have been looking at an entirely different approach to planning and development. As you are aware, we are operating under the Planning and Facilitation of Development Act. And we are placing a lot of emphasis on that word of facilitation. And what we would like to see happen in the profession is that there is a more integrated approach to planning and development. So we have looked at this structure that existed, and what we have done is that we have really expanded that structure significantly. And that is in order to do the things that we want to do. I often indicate that if you're going to change your fleet of aircraft, for instance, you need to have an entirely new approach, because you're really dealing with new technologies, new techniques, and so on. So that we have included in the new structure that we have already envisaged a position for a registered architect. Now, there was always a position for an architect, from what I understand, but that position was not filled and there was no active architect in that position. We have included, for instance, an urban economist. People say, why do you need an economist? They're doing economic planning somewhere else. We have included a sociologist. Well, why do you need a sociologist? We haven't had a sociologist here. And what that is intended to do really is to approach development from a point of view of achieving development. In other words, not simply to have the plans and the policies and you bring in an application and it's considered within the context of those policies and regulations and so on. that is going to continue. We're not, sorry, we are not going to do anything, significant about that. The regulatory aspects of planning will remain. So what we want to do, that in addition to that, is more of an advocacy role or position that is arrived at through the integration of these disciplines. So that within the structure itself, the planner would have responsibility, of course, for the intersectoral or interdisciplinary aspects, would be able to have as an immediate input the architects, engineer, the sociologist, the economist, and within the legislation, there is actually an expectation that projects would be identified and will be submitted to the minister, to the ministry. It says about 3 months prior to each budget. So what we are doing is moving from more of a passive approach to planning and development, where you simply sit and wait for the client to come in, to actually also identify initiatives that can actually lead to development. Now, what would be the role of the architect in this particular configuration? If we were to think in terms of various sites in Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, I have some pen, P's or positions about a number of sites that I think could have been developed differently if we had that approach and we had the disciplines contributing to what we consider to be development that transforms communities. Not only communities in a physical sense, but transforms communities in terms of the well-being of the people. So that what we build in terms of whether site-specific or whether community involvement, at the end of the day, that it should manifest itself in actual transformation, not only the physical environment, but the well-being of the people. And therefore, let's take, for instance, I give you 2 examples. 15 years ago, I had a look at Invaders Bay and felt that if we had all of the disciplines participating, you can bring in maybe somebody who's in tourism and you say, look, what's the location of this? You want to optimize the use of that particular site. What are the linkages, economic forward and backward linkages, that would facilitate the optimal use of that site, but also have linkages to perhaps satellite communities, that the proper use of that site can have an impact on other communities. So that if we were to look at that site, or when I looked at that site, for instance, I felt that the linkages were in terms of tourism. Why? Because you have a number of other kinds of functions that would fit into that particular approach to development. You have the port there already. You have, these ships that are coming in now with 5,000-6,000, so they come in. You have cultural products that we need to package and market. That could also be linked to that. So then, is it possible that carnival could be held every day? Not just for us, but for those visitors who can spend 2 hours just jumping up in Trinidad and, you don't have to come out, just use that facility there. Could we have put the steel bond facility in that location, which you come out and you're hearing pan every day. If we were able to do that, how is that then linked to, let's say, Eastport of Spain, for instance? We can link it, and this is what we would want our urban economists and perhaps investment analysts, if I would have my way to also include, to say, well, look, because we have increased that activity by optimizing that approach and that building or buildings in that location, we can now increase certain economic activities in a satellite area that needs that sort of relationship. How do we then design those structures? What would be the brief for those facilities if we are, in fact, telegraphing that, look, here is a location that can best be used for A, B, C, D, and we all sit down and then begin to look at it. What would be the economic benefits? We would want our sociologists who should have some background, for instance, given our peculiarities, let's say, maybe crime, for instance, what would be the role of this group, of these disciplines in crime abatement? Not only from a design perspective, but from a perspective, as I'm saying, that then seeks to transform or to create opportunities for communities that would transform those communities and create economic activities, one at the source that we are talking about, as well as the linkages that we will identify. So that what we are trying to do really is to really have more of an advocacy approach based on the disciplines that we're putting together. We want to look at things such as, the role of, the impact of artificial intelligence on what we're doing, climate change, green architecture, and so on. For instance, there's a hill in the back up there that somebody used to be a slogan at, I think, Mona Moose Mountains. No. Eastport of Spain is already, it's densely populated. We need some space. Is that a space that can be used? So I want our engineers and talk people, is there a problem with the elevation? How can we resolve that? Is there a problem with the regulations? How can we address that? Because the objective is not simply to prepare a plan or to restructure an organization, but it is to achieve development. That is the objective, to achieve development. Trinidad and Tobago has had, I think, very significant capability in terms of spatial or land use planning, as well as economic planning. But these two things seldom do not come together. You have the economists on one side trying to expand the economy. Expanding an economy doesn't necessarily lead to development. What leads to development is how you feel, how you live, how your life is impacted. So that there are countries where you can have a lot of financial resources and it might not necessarily lead to development. So that what we are trying to do at the NPA, and it's certainly taking a little longer time than I would have anticipated, is really to bring about a change and to have the disciplines that we all belong to and that are all interrelated assist in achieving development and to assist in identifying the opportunities that we can present to the government to say, look, here are some opportunities that we think you may need to look at, so that we can design projects, that we can manage projects that would actually lead to the development that we are talking about. And I think that if our interrelated professions were to have that integrated, coordinated approach to the whole development objective, an immediate objective of an institution, but the developmental objective of changing communities and lives, I think that we would have some success. So that in the new dispensation, we are expecting to work much more closely with architectural inputs and have achieved some development. Thanks a lot.